everyone. I'm Riyaz Khatib from Banashwar PU College, Athani. Let us today know about muscles. In my previous lectures, I have discussed with other topics from the locomotion and movement. We have learned the basic information about the locomotion and movement. Today, let us start with the muscle structure. Muscle is a contractile tissue derived from mesoderm. So it develops from the embryonic mesoderm. So it is a tissue originating from mesoderm, and it makes up 40 to 50% of our body mass. So the flesh in our body is nothing but muscles. Muscles help us in movements and locomotion. Without the help of muscle, we cannot move any part of our body, not a single finger. So for every action we do, we need the help of muscles. If body's muscular system fails, we become completely paralyzed. Just for a smile, at least 12 muscles in our face undergo contraction. Think about just smile. If you are just smiling, at least 12 muscles in your face are undergoing contraction. So that is the baby smiling there. Okay. Then let's list out the actions that involve muscle functions. Movement of our limbs and locomotion. Movement of limbs like we are writing, we are walking, we are dancing, running, we are taking part in the athletic activities, in sports, we are doing yoga. All those movements which involve our limbs, right? So those are by the help of muscles. Mastication, feeding. When you put food in our mouth, we see that immediately we start chewing. Chewing is called as mastication. That involves so many muscles of our face which are attached to the jaw. And not only that, even the tongue which rolls the food in our mouth cavity to mix it with the saliva. So the muscles in the tongue also are in action. Oral conversation. I am talking to you now. Oral conversation, whatever we do, we are able to speak out something. It is only because of the muscular action of our tongue and face muscles. Okay? That helps us in converting the single kind of sound coming from our sound box into the words, the verbal communication what we have. So that is with the help of muscles only. Movement of food in the alimentary canal. As in when we swallow the food, it passes through the pharynx and then into the esophagus. You know that the wall of the esophagus shows peristaltic movement that pushes the food down. That's also muscular function. And not only that, all along the alimentary canal, as the food moves down, it is the action of muscles which makes it, or which keeps it moving down. And even the churning movement, you might be remembering, the churning movements of the wall of the stomach that mixes the food well with the enzyme. So that's also a muscular activity. Micturition, that is releasing the urine out. That's also involving the action of muscles. And sphincters. Sphincters are also muscles which, when relaxed, the urethra opens up and the urine is let down. And even in the wall of the urinary bladder, there are smooth muscles which contract to push the urine out. So that's how the maturation is also function of muscles. Then lower jaw movements. In our skull, it is a lower jaw which can move up and down and even side by side a little bit. And that is how we are able to talk and we are able to chew the food. So that lower jaw movements are also controlled by muscles. Eyeball movements. Our eyeballs are connected to the bony socket inside, that is the orbits inside, by the muscles. And these muscles, there are different muscles which help our eyeball in movement so that we can turn our eyes up and down and sideways. So eyeball movements are also involving the muscles. Changes in the pupil size, as you have studied in the topic on eyes, we see that the pupil becomes narrower or wider as per the requirement when we are focusing on some object in dim light or in bright light. Okay, the change in the pupil size is again due to the muscles which are there in the iris, radial and circular muscles. They help us in making the pupil size changed when we are viewing the objects in dim light and then when we are viewing in bright light to protect from the harmful effect of more light entering into our body. Pupil size will be narrowed whenever we see an object in bright light. Movements of eyelids. Even eyelid movements are also by the help of muscles. Let's take up the next function. Goosebumps. You might have seen whenever you are horrified or whenever you are highly, in a situation of fear. Okay, when your adrenaline is high, what you see is your hair stand up. Goosebumps we call, right? And even due to a very cold climatical condition in winter, your hair stand up, and that is also because of the activity of muscle. There are small muscles attached to the hair follicle, and that is in the skin. So these bring about the raising of the hair. That's called as goosebump. Heartbeat, the most important function, the only muscular activity that keeps us surviving. Unless and until the heart stops beating, we will be surviving, we will be living. Once it stops beating, then we'll be no more. So, very important function of contractions and relaxations of the ventricles of the heart to keep blood being pumped throughout our body. So heartbeat is also muscular function. Parturition, even delivery of the child, that is pushing out the fully grown fetus out of the mother's womb. That's also by the contractions of the smooth muscles in the wall of the uterus, and that is what, again, a muscular activity. Shivering. Whenever we feel cold, the surroundings are very cool, then if we are not wearing a warm cloth, so usually we see that we shiver. All our muscles at once start contracting and relaxing, so that's called as shivering in order to generate some heat inside our body. So that's also muscular activity. Breathing, even if you take up, you have studied mechanism of breathing, wherein the external intercostal muscles, internal intercostal muscles, and the muscles of the diaphragm, all these you have seen how they are helpful in exhaling and inhaling so that we keep breathing. So that's also a muscular activity. Coughing and sneezing is also helped by or regulated by the muscular contractions only. All of a sudden, we see that we cough if something goes some dust or some irritating particle enters into our respiratory tract or into the lungs, we see that our lungs contract quickly and expels the air out, and that's also by the help of the muscles, muscles of the ribs attached to the ribs as well as the diaphragm. And even in sneezing, we see that muscles help us to blow out the things entering into the nose. Then smiling, frowning, laughing, and other facial expressions, what we do in everyday basis, anytime, any moment when we are talking to somebody, we express ourselves. We are happy, we are angry, we are laughing sometimes, we are smiling sometimes, we are crying. All these actions are again involving the facial muscles.
There are three types of muscles as we know: skeletal muscles or striated muscles, smooth muscles or visceral muscles, and cardiac muscles or the muscles of the heart. Their unit structures, that is their muscle fiber, they have different shape and structure. So if you take up the striated muscle fiber, we see that it is multinucleated. As you see here, the nuclei, you find here that there are so many nuclei. So it is multinucleated, cylindrical, long, tapering ends you have here, both the side tapering ends, and it shows the striations, the dark and light bands you can see there, dark bands and light bands, because of the arrangement of myosin and actin. This is the dark band and this is the light band. Okay, so that is the structure of a striated muscle fiber, and it is further divided into sarcomeres. You see here a Z line, and in between two Z lines, if you look at, for example, this Z line, okay, this Z line to this Z line, so this is called as one sarcomere. So this is what the structure of the striated muscle fiber. If you take up the smooth muscle fiber, look at the shape. It is spindle shaped. It is spindle shaped as we see here, and uninucleate cell. This muscle fiber is uninucleate. A single nucleus is there. Tapering ends are there, and it does not show any striations because the contractile elements, the myosin and actin, they are in the form of a network inside the sarcoplasm of the smooth muscle. And the third type of muscle fiber is the cardiac muscle fiber, which is found in the wall of the heart, more so in the ventricles, and these are again cylindrical, striated. As you can see here, the light and dark bands are there, but uninucleate, again a single nucleus is there. So the cardiac muscle fibers, they have the general appearance, striated appearance, just like that of the striated muscle, but they are uninucleate, single nucleus they have, and they are branched. As you can see here, this is the branch, and at the ends, as you see here, this end, this end, and this end, and at the ends of the muscle fiber you have intercalated discs here. So intercalated discs help in bringing about connection between different cardiac muscle fibers. That means from here another muscle fiber, cardiac muscle fiber starts, and from here another one. So they are interconnected, and these intercalated discs, they have gap junctions through which the ions can move from one cardiac muscle to another cardiac muscle. So just remember the three different types of muscle fibers. One, as we see in the skeletal muscles, striated muscle fiber. The next, which we see in the smooth muscle fibers or visceral muscle fibers. And the third one is the cardiac muscle fiber.
Okay, types of muscles we are looking into. Skeletal muscles, if you take up, they are attached to the skeleton, that is the bones. Visceral muscles are found in the hollow organs, that is walls of the hollow organs like digestive system and reproductive tracts. So there you find these visceral muscles, as well as in the walls of the blood vessel, in the ciliary body and iris of the eye also we find these visceral muscles. Then cardiac muscles are found in the ventricles of the heart as well as atria of the heart. They are more prominent in the thick walls of the ventricles of the heart that help in pumping the blood. Then if you take up the other features like the shape and structure of the muscle fiber. Muscle fiber is a single muscle cell. So in skeletal muscles, the units, the muscle fibers are elongated, cylindrical with tapering ends. Whereas the visceral muscles have the muscle fibers which are spindle shaped with tapering ends. Tapering means pointed ends. Whereas the cardiac muscles are cylindrical and short muscle fibers with blunt ends. So here you don't find tapering ends. Then if you take up the nuclei, skeletal muscle fibers have many nuclei, multinucleated, and that condition is called as syncytial. Whereas if you take up the visceral muscle, they are uninucleate, single nucleus is there. And cardiac muscles also, muscle fibers also have a single nucleus. Then if you take up the skeletal muscle fibers, they are striated, that is having light and dark bands, whereas the visceral muscles are unstriated or non-striated, and cardiac muscles again they are striated. Striations are due to the presence of dark and light bands. Under the microscope, if you observe the muscle fibers, stained muscle fibers, they show the dark and light bands, and these are because of the presence of two different types of proteins, contractile proteins, and they give this striated nature. Skeletal muscles do not have intercalated discs. Visceral muscles also do not have intercalated muscles, but cardiac muscles, they have intercalated discs which are found at the blunt ends of the muscle fiber. Intercalated discs are helping in connecting the branched cells or the myofibers in the cardiac muscles to each other, end-to-end connection, and also they have the gap junctions, so allow the movement of ions and communication between the different muscle fibers of the heart wall is brought about by these intercalated discs. Now skeletal muscles are having actin and myosin as the contractile proteins. Of course, same proteins you find even in the visceral muscles and cardiac muscles. Myoglobin is another protein which is red colored protein similar to hemoglobin, and thus stores a lot of oxygen. So oxygen storing protein it is, found in all the muscles, but in more quantities in some skeletal muscles and in lesser quantities in the visceral muscles, and again rich quantities of myoglobin you find in the cardiac muscles also. So this myoglobin proteins, they store the oxygen and provide the oxygen whenever it's needed for generating the energy inside the muscles. Skeletal muscles are voluntary in action. Voluntary in action means their activities are controlled by the nervous system, central nervous system, and these are the activities of the muscles of which we are aware, we are conscious, we think and take those decisions for the muscular activities. So they are voluntary. Whereas the visceral muscles as well as the cardiac muscles are involuntary. Their activities are not directly controlled by the central nervous system. They are controlled by either local autonomous nervous system, that is sympathetic and parasympathetic neurons, as in case of the visceral muscles. Remember, visceral muscles are also called as smooth muscles because of their smooth appearance. And in case of cardiac muscles, the contractions of the cardiac muscles are controlled and regulated by special patch of specialized, you can say, tissues, muscle tissues, which can generate the rhythmic contractions of these muscles by creating the signals. And that tissue which is responsible for making the heart muscles contract and relax, that's called as SA node, sinoatrial node. So that's also a small node or a lump of the specialized muscle fibers which generate the waves of the excitation, right, or electric signals. So therefore the heart in humans is called as myogenic. So that kind of activity which is not involving the nervous system, we call it as involuntary. Then the skeletal muscles undergo fatigue. Fatigue means they get tired when we put them into the work. After some time we get tired, our muscles don't cope up with our activities, we feel pain in our muscles and we feel like having rest. So therefore the skeletal muscles also need rest and they undergo fatigue. Even the visceral muscles or smooth muscles also undergo fatigue, but cardiac muscles do not undergo fatigue because cardiac muscles cannot take long rest. Like when we are sleeping, the other muscles are taking rest, but cardiac muscles are not taking rest. Our heart is continuously pumping the blood throughout our life. How is that possible? Because these cardiac muscles are also, of course, living cells, living muscle cells. So here what happens is, in between the two heartbeats there is a very small time period in fractions of seconds, and that's the time when the cardiac muscles get rest, when they are relaxing in between every two heartbeats. Okay, so that is if I am correct, around 0.3 seconds time. So that is how they are continuously contracting and taking rest also. So they are able to continue working throughout our life. Skeletal muscles are divided into two types, red muscles and white muscles, whereas no such types you find in the visceral and the cardiac muscles. Then skeletal muscles have calcium binding sites which are called as troponin molecules. Calcium ions are very important for muscular activity. So calcium ions bind to the troponin in case of the skeletal muscles. In case of the visceral muscles, they are the calmodulins. Calmodulins are the calcium binding substances attached to the contractile elements or contractile proteins inside the visceral muscles, whereas the cardiac muscles again have the troponins as the calcium binding sites. Now let's take up the differences between red muscle fiber and white muscle fiber. First, taking up red muscle fiber. Red muscles or red muscle fibers have large number of blood capillaries supplied, and inside the muscle fibers large number of mitochondria and also more myoglobins. And red muscle fibers contain less number of sarcoplasmic reticuli. Sarcoplasmic reticuli are the endoplasmic reticuli of the muscle fibers. Red muscle fibers generate energy by aerobic respiration. Very less lactic acid is formed when oxygen supply is less. Red muscles are also called as slow twitch muscle fiber because their contractions are slow and for a long time. Now let us take up the white muscle fibers. They have less number of blood capillaries supplied, and the mitochondria are also less in number, and even myoglobins are very few in number. Okay. The next, the white muscle fibers, they have large number of sarcoplasmic reticuli. Questions have appeared in the previous examinations in multiple choice type questions where this concept has been taken up, whether red muscles have more number of sarcoplasmic reticuli or white muscle fibers. So it is the white muscle fibers which have large number of sarcoplasmic reticuli compared to red muscles. White muscles generate energy by anaerobic respiration. Anaerobic respiration is taking place there. Glycogen undergoes the first step of the respiratory metabolism, that is called as the pyruvic acid formation. Okay, and then that pyruvic acid will be converted to lactic acid. So like this, the glycogen is converted to lactic acid, and whatever energy is generated, that is used up for the functioning of white muscle fibers. They are the fast twitch muscle fibers. They are quick in action, they are fast contracting, and for short duration of time. Their function is sudden, causing sudden movements. Now, structure of skeletal muscle we need to know. This is a diagram from the NCERT book which gives you the details of a muscle. As we see there that the muscle, skeletal muscle, is further divided into bundles of the muscle fiber, and these bundles are called as the muscle bundles or fascicles. So there are so many fascicles in a muscle, and in between the fascicles there are interfascicular blood vessels, okay, and each fascicle, if you take up, it is made up of large number of the myofibers or muscle fibers, which are the muscle cells. You can see the supply of the blood vessels. There's interfascicular blood vessel further giving out the branches, capillaries, and they are surrounding these muscle cells, the muscle fibers or myofibers, and the muscle is covered by a connective tissue layer outside that is called as epimysium. It's called as epimysium, and these fascicles are held together by a collagenous connective tissue in between that is called as fascia. Okay, now let us take up some more diagrams to understand the detailed structure of a muscle. See here in this diagram, this is the muscle section to show the internal structures. So this muscle, like for example the muscle of our upper arm, bicep muscle, it is connected to the bone by the help of fibrous connective tissue called as the tendon. Okay, this is the tendon, for example, here, and this is the muscle which is cut open here to show the internal structure, and this is worn out or opened up. Upper covering, outermost covering, is the epimysium, okay, surrounding the muscle, okay, encapsulating the muscle, and inside the muscle, as we have seen in previous diagram, there are muscle fascicles held together by the fascia, and immediately surrounding each fascicle there is again the connective tissue that is called as perimysium. Now you see a single muscle fascicle here. This is a single muscle fascicle, like this one is taken up here further. It is surrounded by the perimysium, and a single muscle fascicle has got large number of the muscle fibers inside. So these are all muscle fibers in section, you can see here, and one muscle fiber is pulled out here. This is one muscle fiber which is multinucleated, as we see here, many nuclei you can find here, and this muscle fiber is packed with large number of the myofibrils inside. Okay, now one single muscle fiber is shown here, multinucleated nature, you can see that, and it is surrounded by the sarcolemma, and of course in between the muscle fibers or myofibers there is a connective tissue holding them together that is called as endomysium. Okay, but the plasma membrane of the muscle fiber is called as the sarcolemma. Now we see this is the interior of the muscle fiber, a single muscle cell from a skeletal muscle. We find here that it's completely packed with the myofibrils, the contractile structures inside, myofibrils which are parallelly running all along the length of the myofiber, and in between the cytoplasm which is there is called as the sarcoplasm. In the sarcoplasm you find mitochondria, and the endoplasmic reticuli in muscle fibers are called as sarcoplasmic reticuli. You will find it in the next slide. This is same thing, enlarged, highly enlarged, and if you take up one single myofiber, and from myofiber one single myofibril if you pull out, that myofibril looks like this. It is made up of the contractile elements. There are two types of elements. They are also called as the contractile filaments or myofilaments. One is thick, which is called as myosin filament, and another thin, called as the actin filament. So these are the actin filaments, the thin ones, what you see here, this one, this one. These are the thin actin filaments, and these are the thick ones, are the myosin filaments. So they are arranged in a particular fashion. All the actin filaments are attached to a zigzag line that is called as the Z line, and the two Z lines, if you take up, there are so many Z lines all along the length of the myofibril. Okay, the area or the part of the myofibril in between two Z lines is called as one sarcomere. Okay, it's one sarcomere. And the region where only myosins, you can see there is myosins, only myosin zone, that is called as H zone, and on either side of the H zone you have overlapping zone of myosin, actin, myosin, actin, myosin, actin, like that. Okay, and the area where you find the myosin filament from one end to another end, so this forms the dark band, and that dark band is called as the A band or anisotropic band, and the two A bands will be alternating with or interspersed with the light band, which is called as I band, where we have mainly the thin actin filaments. So this thin actin filaments, they form the I band, and thus indicate the boundary between two sarcomeres. So half of the I band is in one sarcomere, another half is in another sarcomere. So from here another sarcomere begins, and from here to here, that is one complete sarcomere. And we see that along with these myofibrils in the sarcoplasm, we have sarcoplasmic reticuli. This is just one, the picture showing here. This is sarcoplasmic reticulum. Sarcoplasmic reticulum, you must remember that they are the storehouses of calcium ions. Okay, and this is the surface of the myofiber, where we can see the dark and light bands. Okay, now this picture shows you another important structure, which is called as T-tubule. There are T-tubules closely associated with the cisternae of the endoplasmic reticulum, that is sarcoplasmic reticulum. This is one cisterna of the sarcoplasmic reticulum. This is another cisterna. Cisterna means flat sac-like structures of the sarcoplasmic reticulum, and these are associated with the T-tubules. T-tubules open outside the myofiber through the pores or openings in the sarcolemma, that is the plasma membrane of the myofiber. And these T-tubules play an important role in conveying the action potential and helping in a release of calcium ions from the sarcoplasmic reticulum. Now we have learned that. Let's summarize whatever we have learned so far. Skeletal muscles are called so because they are mainly attached to bones. They are attached to bones by the help of tendon, which are the fibrous connective tissue cords. these muscles, they have striped appearance, therefore they are called as striated muscles. Their activities are under the control of central nervous system, so therefore they are called as voluntary muscles. They are primarily involved in locomotion and changes of body posture, positions of different parts of our body. We keep changing our standing postures, sitting postures, right? Different postures we assume during the exercises and yoga, etc. So all these postures are also because of the activities of the skeletal muscles. Now let's take up the visceral muscles, which are found in inner walls of the hollow visceral organs of our body, like alimentary canal and reproductive tracts, etc. They are also known as smooth muscles due to their appearance, smooth surfaces they have. The non-striated muscles are smooth muscles. They do not show any stripes on it. That means there are no light and dark bands. That is because here the contractile elements, the actin and myosin, they are arranged in the form of a network. They are not arranged in the form of the bands. Okay. The smooth muscles, they have the activities which are not under the voluntary control of central nervous system. So they are the involuntary muscles. Mainly they are controlled by the sympathetic and parasympathetic neurons or by special regulatory muscles. They actually assist in transportation of food through the digestive tract. Like, for example, when we swallow the food, it will be sent to the stomach by contractile activity of the muscles in the wall of the esophagus. That's what called as peristaltic movement. And this peristaltic movement continues all along the intestine also to push the food further down. And you might also remember that the wall of the stomach has got three different layers of the smooth muscles, which bring about the very effective contractions in all the directions so as to mix the food thoroughly with the enzymes inside, and that's what called as the churning movement, and that's also the activity of the smooth muscles or visceral muscles. Cardiac muscles are muscles of heart. As we have learnt, they are found in the heart, wall of the heart only. They are numerous. They form a very thick walls of the ventricle, but they are very few in the walls of the atria because of the difference in the functional activity. Atria have to pump the blood just to the ventricles, whereas the ventricles have to pump the blood with the force enough to push the blood throughout our body to all the body parts. Therefore, the walls of the ventricle are provided with large number of cardiac muscles, so they are very, very thick. Cardiac muscles are branched striated muscles. They are branched and they also show the bands, light and dark bands. They are involuntary in action, as we know. These muscles, cardiac muscles or heart muscles, are not under the control of the nervous system directly. Their contractions are rather triggered by the electric signals arising from the sinoatrial node, specialized node of specialized you can say, node of specialized contractile muscles, or the muscles which are myogenic in nature. They create the waves of the excitation, and that makes the heart muscles to contract. So therefore our heart is myogenic in nature. We also have seen that the dilation of we have also seen the detailed structure of skeletal muscle. Let us take up some points from there. Each organized skeletal muscle in our body is made up of number of muscle bundles called as fascicles. Fascicles are held together by a common collagenous connective tissue called as fascia. We have seen that in the diagram. Each muscle bundle contains number of muscle fibers, and each muscle fiber is lined by plasma membrane called as sarcolemma. Muscle fiber is a syncytium, that is, its cytoplasm or the sarcoplasm has got large number of nuclei, but the nuclei are pushed towards the periphery because of the myofibrils which are filling the interior of the myofiber. Sarcoplasmic reticulum is another organelle, important organelle inside the myofiber, and it stores the calcium ions. Large number of parallelly arranged filaments inside the sarcoplasm of a myofiber are the myofibrils. Each myofibril has got alternate light and dark bands that establish the striated nature or striated appearance of the muscle fiber, as well as the complete fascicle. It is due to arrangement of actin and myosin proteins that are contractile elements, also called as myofilaments. So that's all about the structure of the muscle. The next subtopic about the mechanism of muscle contraction will take up in our next video session. Till then, bye bye. So we have seen the differences between three types of muscles: skeletal muscle, visceral muscle, and cardiac muscle. One more difference, let me tell you, is that the skeletal muscle undergo fatigue. Even visceral muscles or smooth muscles also undergo fatigue. Fatigue means what? Fatigue means they no more respond further to the stimuli. So they get tired, so as to say. And these muscles need rest. So therefore, we need a rest of 8 hours at least every day. So these muscles, they become fatigued. They cannot function further until you give them rest. Which are those? Skeletal muscles and visceral muscles. But cardiac muscles, they do not undergo fatigue. They do not need such a long rest. They continuously keep working throughout our life. We can just imagine that our heart never stops beating. If our heart stops beating, we will be no more. So the cardiac muscles are designed in such a way that they work continuously without fatigue. Then question arises, these are also muscles, living cells. How come they are able to work throughout our life without any rest? There is an answer for that. In between every 2 heartbeats, there is a fraction of seconds time if I'm right, it is about 0.3 seconds. That's the time during which the muscles of the heart or cardiac muscle take rest. In between every 2 heartbeats. So that is how they keep on working throughout our life. Now let us take up the skeletal muscles, which are the main muscles in our body that forms the flesh in our body. They are attached to our bones. None of our bone can move without the help of these muscles. So they are called as skeletal muscles. They are there attached to our limbs, hands and legs, so that they bring about the movements of our limbs and the hands, and we are able to locomote or move from one place to another place. Now this is a structure of single muscle, skeletal muscle, which is attached to the bone by a connective tissue, which is called as tendon, which is fibrous connective tissue, tough fibrous connective tissue. And then this is what the muscle, which is cut in the middle, taken a section to see the interior of the muscle. Muscle, for example, you can feel your bicep in front of the upper arm and tricep on the back side of your upper arm. So these muscles, if you feel, when you move your hand, you see that the muscle has become short and thick. That is, this muscle has undergone contracted, and this contraction pulls the lower half of the hand, the bones of the lower limb up. So like that we are able to move our hand. So that is how the connection to the bones is through the tendon, and this is one muscle, and I have taken a three-dimensional view here in a section. If you see, the muscle as such is surrounded by a tough connective tissue membrane that is called as epimysium, and then inside the muscle there are bundles of muscle fibers or bundles of myofibers, and these bundles are called as fascicles, and these fascicles are also surrounded by a connective tissue in between which is holding them together, and that is called as fascia. And the part of the fascia immediately surrounding the fascicles is also taken as perimysium. Okay, and inside these fascia, inside the fascia there is a connective tissue. You see that the blood vessels are traversing, moving through it. Right? There are interfascicular arteries and veins. So red ones, what I have drawn here, are the interfascicular arteries, and veins also you find there. So that means each fascicle is richly supplied with the blood vessels because it needs a lot of oxygen and glucose for generating the energy to bring about the function of the muscle. So these bundles of the muscle fibers are called as myofibers also. So bundles of myofibers is called as a fasciculum, and such, or a fascicle, and such, so many fascicles are there inside the muscle. Okay, and inside a fascicle of the muscle you find that there are several hundreds of the myofibers or muscle fibers, single cells, right? And all these cells are packed into one fascicle, and they are held together by another connective tissue in between that is called as endomysium. So endomysium also surrounds each of the muscle fiber, and that is nothing but the sarcolemma, we call the plasma membrane surrounding the each myofiber is called as sarcolemma. Okay, now one myofiber is pulled out, and inside that myofiber you find again several myofibrils, contractile elements, right? So hundreds of myofibrils are packed in one single myofiber or muscle cell, and that's why the nuclei are pushed to the periphery. So you will find the nuclei of the myofiber like this. So that's about the main structure of the muscle. Now let us take up a small portion of the myofiber, a single myofiber or muscle cell, which appears like this. You find here the dark and light bands. Dark bands are due to the presence of myosin there. Myosin filaments forming the dark bands like this, thick dark bands. Whereas the light bands made up of thin filaments called as actin. So they are named differently. The dark bands are called as A bands, and the light band is called as the I band. Here A refers to anisotropic. Anisotropic band, and I refers to isotropic band. Isotropic band. Now in the center of the I band you find one line, zigzag line, that is called a Z line. Okay? The portion between two Z lines, say from here to here, this portion is taken as one sarcomere. One sarcomere. Okay? And this is the motor nerve, which is ending on the surface of a myofiber. Now here I have drawn the interior of the myofiber, which contains so many myofibrils inside. In this diagram, if I take up, this one is one myofibril. Remember, myofiber is the muscle cell, the cylindrical, elongated with tapering end, single cell, myofiber. Inside the myofiber, there are long contractile elements containing the contractile proteins. They are called as myofibrils. So this is one myofibril, another myofibril starting from here down like that. And in between you have this cytoplasm over here. The cytoplasm of the muscle cell, cytoplasm of the muscle cell is called as sarcoplasm. Sarcoplasm, and this is the nucleus. There are so many nuclei all along the myofiber, located peripherally like this. And this is the place where a axon ending, you see here, a motor nerve axon ending is shown here. So this is called as motor end plate or neuromuscular junction. So this motor nerve brings about the message or the electric signal and excites the muscle fiber. Okay, and this gap is called as synaptic cleft, through which, by the help of the acetylcholine, the transmission of nerve impulse take place. Okay, so this is what called as motor end plate, and that controls the activity of skeletal muscle, because motor nerves come from the central nervous system. Okay, now let us look into
the detailed structure of each myofibril inside the myofiber. This is one myofibril. As you see here, it is consisting of two types of contractile elements. These thick ones are the myosin filaments. And these thin ones are the actin filaments. So the zigzag line which you see here is the Z line, and as I told earlier, two Z lines demarcate one compartment that is called as one sarcomere. One sarcomere from here to here. And to these zigzag lines attached are the thin filaments which are called as actin filaments. And these actin filaments, they are slightly overlapping in between the myosin filaments. Myosin filaments are thick one. They are polymers made up of so many units, and these units are the so many units of these which are called as the meromyosin molecules. Meromyosin molecules make up large number of meromyosin molecules make up these one single myosin filament. Okay, and these myosin filaments are again connected to each other by cementing material, and this line what you see here is called as Young line. It's called as Young line, that keep all the myosin filaments connected together. Myosin filaments are thick and they do not move, they remain in one place, whereas the actin filaments are thin and they move inward. So when they move inward, the two Z line will come closer to the myosin filament so that the muscle fiber contracts, it becomes short. So that is how the these two types of the contractile proteins are helping in contraction of the muscle. We will take up the detailed process of or mechanism of muscle contraction later on. Let's see what are the other details we find here and how these different parts are named. Like we know from here to here it is one sarcomere, okay, between two Z lines, and this part where only myosin filaments you find, right, that is called as H zone. It's called as H zone. Where you find, that's actually going to take up here, from here to here, where only you find the myosin filaments, and there are at the outer ends the myosin filaments are overlapped by the actin filaments. Here they are overlapped. Those are the areas where both myosin actin you will find. Okay, and this is what called as Z zone and M line. From here to here, one sarcomere, and the area which is occupied by the myosin filaments, from one end to another end of myosin filaments, this part is called as the A band. A band, that is this much. A band or anisotropic band, the dark band, and the light band on either side, which is comprising of half part of the one sarcomere and half of the other sarcomere. So this region is called as the I band or isotropic band. Okay, so A band, I band on either side, M line, then this H zone, only myosin zone, when the muscle is in relaxed state. Remember, not contracted. Because when muscle contract, the actin filaments move inward completely. Okay? So, completely the myosins get overlapped by the actins. So, it is in a relaxed state. So, that is what the internal structure of each myofibril inside, and such large number of myofibrils are there, and their Z lines and their M lines, H zones, everything are perfectly in line with each other, and therefore that gives to the complete fasciculum even the striated nature. Okay, so that is how the striations are formed because of these two different types of the filaments. Okay, now in the cytoplasm of the muscle cell, the cytoplasm of muscle cell is called as the sarcoplasm. In sarcoplasm, you find the endoplasmic reticuli, modified endoplasmic reticuli, and they are called as sarcoplasmic reticuli. Sarcoplasmic reticuli. Sarcoplasmic reticuli, and these sarcoplasmic reticuli are the reservoirs of the calcium ions. They are the reservoirs of calcium ions. They release the calcium ions, which are playing very important role in muscle contraction. Okay, so this is about the detailed ultrastructure of a muscle cell. Now we will take up the mechanism of muscle contraction. Okay. So, needle will